Be strong in the Lord and the strength of his might. Put on the whole armor of God that you might be able to stand against the schemes of the devil. I recently had a discussion with a loved one about our life choices and life events that kind of shaped us from our youths into who we are today. Life choices can affect us both positively and negatively based on our own choices, meaning it gives us somebody that we can blame. And sometimes we do that. On the other hand, life events just happen by happenstance. In other words, they just happen. We really don't have anybody to blame on those. They just are what they are. Remarkably, as human beings, we have the ability to find fault, sometimes with other people, and sometimes we find fault and blame in ourselves. But one thing we don't really consider is, what if it's neither of those things? Like people in our lives or ourselves. Is there another source? Although it's normal to have self-doubt, sometimes the doubts we have seem to come from an outside source. Instead of saying to ourselves something like, well, we could have done that differently, our thoughts seem to manifest a blame game on ourselves and sometimes towards other people, as I was saying before. But sometimes those other thoughts seem to creep in and they seem to be accusatory toward us. And they say things like, you're no good, or you're not worthy, or you don't deserve to be here, things like that. Have you ever had thoughts like these? Most of us have. And like the rest of the normal world, we tend not to talk about those. In this video, we're going to address 3 questions that come up from those inner dialogues that we have with ourselves or with that other source. Why do we have these thoughts? Where do these thoughts come from? And what can we do to stop them? So sometimes those thoughts, as we found out in our discussion, can sometimes lead us to saying things like, we don't deserve to be here, or maybe we should end it. So in our conversation, we talked about our younger selves and compared that to where we ended up today. Like most every other human being on the planet, we realized that we've made mistakes, sometimes embarrassingly so. The strange thing that we discovered is, for some reason, when we look at ourselves, even though we're making good decisions today, we still see ourselves with that residual self-image from our past. We just can't seem to get away from it. So while we were discussing this, it reminded me of The Matrix. There's a scene in there where Morpheus is explaining to Neo about the Matrix, or the construct, and his residual self-image. If memory serves me correctly, Neo had questioned as to what was going on in that particular scene, and Morpheus was explaining to him about how he looks different than he does in the real world. It looks to Neo like he is a better version of himself, and that's what we see here.
Is it really so hard to believe? Your clothes are different, the plugs in your arms and head are gone. Your hair has changed. Your appearance now is what we call residual self-image. It is the mental projection of your digital self.
However, in our residual self-image, we tend to see ourselves as the negative person, or the lesser than. We see ourselves as the one making all the mistakes from our past, rather than the one that's making the better decisions that we are today. But what if those thoughts are not coming from us? What if they're coming from another source? While we were speaking, it occurred to us how silly it was for us to be so fatalistic in our self-judgment. We wouldn't put that kind of judgment on other people, yet when it comes to us and ourselves, we tend to tear ourselves apart, tear ourselves down. And we just put an unreasonable bar up to where we can't reach it. And if we don't reach it, we just call ourselves flat out failures, even though if there's good things that we did along the way. So this person I was speaking to was saying, I've let down my family, my mom, my dad. I've been an addict. It doesn't matter what it is. It's all life things, right? I had goals. I didn't reach them. I was an addict. I even broke the law. And with that, I could only respond with, so what? Why does that matter? What you did in the past? I mean, yes. Should you have remorse for them? Sure. But if you're doing right things now, why can't we give ourselves that credit? So in wondering about where these thoughts come from, I do believe that there is an outside source that tends to feed these things into our ears. In the Bible, there's an encounter with Jesus has with the devil. The doubter puts doubt in the ears of people. He did it with Adam and Eve in the garden, and he was trying to do it with Jesus. But what about us? Perhaps he does that to us as well. So if this is the case, we should understand who is giving us those thoughts. It reminded me of the movie Nefarioius. In that movie, there's an inmate who is facing the death penalty and has to meet with a psychologist or a psychiatrist to see if he's fit to receive his sentence. In other words, was he sane or was he insane? If he's insane, it's not his fault. If he's sane, he's getting a chair. So the demon is speaking through this inmate, and he is describing his hatred for humanity.
The enemy was going to allow you to fill our vacant places in his realm. Your creation was nothing but a slap in our face. But my master also understood that if he could make man disobey, then his fate would mirror ours. And you didn't disappoint. Then came the tares among the wheat. In that moment, spirit became matter, flesh became a vessel. Self-will and self-seeking begat a lusting after sin and impurity. And man, created to be king over nature, became its slave. A master, conquered and fettered. And sin brought him and his descendants to us. And we began our forever mission to destroy you. He made you in his image, but we remade you in ours.
So because of their fall, demons have a special place in their hearts for us, and it's wicked. It's hatred. They want to see us destroyed, as he says. So in Luke 22:31, it's explained like this. And the Lord said, Simon, Simon, indeed, Satan has asked for you that he may sift you as wheat. Now the point here is that Simon, being Peter, did not realize that as the devil had done to Adam and Eve, as he has done to Jesus, he wanted to do, and to Job, he wanted to do the same thing to Peter, to shake him up, to see if he was worthy, to tear him down. And that's a frightening thought. So what do we do to combat these bad thoughts? 1 Peter 5:8 says it like this. Be sober-minded, be watchful. Your adversary, the devil, prowls around like a roaring lion, seeking someone to devour. Verse 9 continues, resist him, firm in your faith, knowing that the same kinds of suffering are being experienced by your brotherhood throughout the world. So this is not just us. This is what the devil does. This is what he wants to do to us. if that's the case, what do we do to defend ourselves against such an adversary who's throwing these thoughts or these flaming arrows toward us? Well, there's the armor of God that's mentioned in Ephesians 6:11 through 17. So 11 puts it like this: put on the whole armor of God that you may be able to stand against the schemes of the devil. 12 continues, for we do not wrestle against flesh and blood, but against the rulers, against the authorities, against the cosmic powers over this present darkness, against the spiritual forces of evil in the heavenly places. So, we are not battling flesh and blood. In other words, we're not battling other people. These are thoughts that are in the heavens, or these are beings that are in the heavens that have the ability to come to us and whisper these sweet little nothings in our ears. Ephesians 6:14 continues like this: stand therefore, having fastened the belt of truth, and having put on the breastplate of righteousness, and as the shoes on your feet, having on the readiness given by the gospel of peace. And in all circumstances, take up that shield of faith, with which you can extinguish all those flaming darts from the evil one. 17 goes on, and take the helmet of salvation and the sword of the Spirit, which is the word of God. So we are to do this daily. If we are in the Word, if we believe that Jesus is who he said he is, if he is faithful to us, he's given us clear instruction to be in training, to don the equipment to do battle, to do spiritual battle, not with flesh and blood, but from the bad thoughts that come our way that are not our own. It is not our own. And we need to realize that the enemy wants to tear us down. He wants to hurt us and separate us from the Lord. I liken him to being called the separator. And in the Bible, he's actually called the accuser. As always, let me know what you think about this video. Love and peace, and I'll talk to you next time. Peace.